Okay, I think it's about time to start. If I could get everybody's attention. So I know we still have a few people coming in, but we're going to start on time, out of respect for everybody's time here. So my name's Dwayne Kelly. I attend the Cowboy Church, and I help get the doors open with the help of Cyndi, Darland, which I'll introduce in just a moment. Just wanted to thank everybody for coming, and we appreciate that there's a concern out there, and we're hoping to get some answers. But I think what I want to do is open this up in a word of prayer and ask God to bless us in this meeting, and then I'll introduce Cyndi. Let's pray, please. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for a chance to meet with the community here, to try and work through some solutions, to get some answers. And I pray that your wisdom would be here in this room, and that we would remember that we're dealing with people, and that we just want to come up with some answers and try and work out some solutions. Lord, we ask that you bless this meeting, keep us on topic, and thank you, Lord, for your blessings on us. In your name, amen. Okay, I'd like to introduce Cyndi Darland. Come on up, Cyndi.
Thank you, Dwayne. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dwayne, and thank you to the Cowboy Church for hosting us. We are so glad that you have taken the time to come to the town hall meeting tonight. The topic tonight is emergency services. We in the county have been put on notice that the city-provided emergency services will end on October 1st. We are here tonight to air our concerns, to have full transparency about the problem and the possible solutions, and how we might move forward in this safety crisis. I appreciate our two county commissioners, Darrel Hale, Cheryl Williams, sorry, I didn't know y'all were married. Cheryl Williams and Darrel Hale, two of my friends that are always available. So I appreciate both of you so very much. I called them after the meeting Tuesday night, and some people came up and said, Cyndi, you've got to do something. And I said, I think the town hall is a good idea. So I called them Wednesday morning, and within about 5 minutes, I had a yes from both of them. Could you applaud that? Thank you. I also appreciate the presence of two city councilwomen here tonight in an unofficial capacity. Carol and David Graves, would you stand? And I don't think Christine Todd has made it here yet. She had another meeting to go to first, but she will be here. They are here because they are concerned, and I appreciate them willing to listen, don't you? I did extend an invitation to Mayor Escobar, and he did agree originally to come as long as I had sheriff deputies present for protection. He subsequently backed out. I also invited the city manager, Mike Mashburn, on Wednesday, and he did decline this afternoon. We will be recording and live streaming the meeting tonight. The first part of the meeting will be our county commissioners giving clarity to the problem and possible solutions. We have passed out cards, and Dwayne and I will have more cards in case you need them, to express your questions, solutions, or comments. Please only put one question per card. So if you need another question, get another card. We will then take those up and read them. And then we are going to allow discussion. If you want to participate, listen carefully on the topic that was read in the question, not another topic. Then I'm asking you to come up and line up at the microphone and take your turn. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and please keep that 3 minutes in consideration of others. I do have a wonderful timekeeper right down here, Barb. And she will tell you, thank you, clap for Barb. She will tell you when you have 15 seconds left and when time is over. And so please do be polite. I appreciate that so much. Again, we thank all of you for participating in this town hall. Now to get started, I'm going to turn it over to our county commissioners and let them begin. Thank you again for coming.
So I'm Cheryl Williams. I share portions of Princeton with Commissioner Hale. We know that you guys have had there's a lot of information, especially out on social media. That doesn't mean it's correct. I really want to thank Cyndi Darland for putting this together. She did it very quickly, and there's a really great turnout. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit kind of about the history, our history, and I know that many of you have much longer history than I do, so sure, okay. So if I get something wrong, you'll let me know, I'm sure. I know that Jimmy Nipp's out here who ran the fire department previously, so we'll make sure that we try and get everything correct. The amount of money that the county spends was originally done primarily to help volunteer fire departments. It was not originally intended even for city departments. And that's what we did for a very long time, is we shared those dollars with the volunteer fire departments, just like cities do, because they're independent entities. They do their own fundraising, and they were created to address rural fire protection. There was a certain point in time where cities felt like they were responding to too many of those calls rather than the volunteer fire departments. They came to the county and asked that they also be given a portion of those dollars. And everything was moving along pretty okay until we saw the annexation changes in the legislature, and suddenly cities began to complain. But this is very recently that they still weren't getting adequate compensation. Excuse me. Darrell, you may want to take over for a second. Sure. Take over for a second.
Yeah, and so once SB 6 passed, that was a law that didn't allow for forced annexation anymore. You couldn't go out, the city couldn't go out and actually annex new subdivisions that were right outside the city limits. Up until that point, if there was a large subdivision that came into being, they could annex it and then receive taxes, and they would fund their fire departments and police and stuff off the taxes they would get from that. So it's just a change. You know, the Commissioner's Court, where we are able to do things like in MUD forms, we had required the legislature add language that would mandate they sign a contract. So, the Bridgewater actually has a contract for that with the city for police and fire, because of the Commissioner's Court, animal control as well. But there were some cities that were upset about that change. They were also upset about SB 2, which limited the amount that taxes could increase every year. Affects us as well. And there were some other bills that were specifically targeted at cities that made them upset. I know that Melissa, they specifically opted out for reasons that were more related to that than anything dollar-wise, because the city manager of Melissa, they asked me, if we'd be upset. And I said, we'd love for you to stay, but this is y'all's decision on how to deal with it, and we'll try to figure something out. And Weston ended up covering around the city of Melissa. But it was purely based on reasons around taxation and annexation for Melissa. It had nothing to do with dollars. It was other reasons. Now, some of the other cities, I know both McKinney and Farmersville, it had to do with dollars, especially for Farmersville, because it was more impactful to them with a much smaller budget than McKinney than it is for McKinney. And then the latest, of course, is Princeton, which is why we're all here tonight. I will say also that that the fire contract that we have in place right now, it actually came about after the first attempt to actually do an ESD and establish a county fire department or a county tax to provide for fire service. Since McKinney and Farmersville canceled, there were some citizens, a couple of whom are here tonight, actually went out and actually started a petition to form an emergency services district. And if you don't know what that is, it's sort of like a special utility district, like a water district, or it's even kind of like a MUD. It's a certain defined area that taxes for a certain purpose. And an emergency services district would tax specifically for dollars for ambulance and fire. And so that would allow the cities that are upset about the dollar amounts that they were receiving for the services to be made whole. And that allows the unincorporated area to pay taxes for specifically emergency services, just like all the city residents already do. I'm a McKinney resident. I understand the logic or why McKinney's doing that. It's, for land that I have out in the unincorporated area myself, it makes sense to be able to have an ESD for it, to be able to pay the cities back for the services they've been providing. And they've been providing A-class service thus far. It is absolutely more than what was asked for in our contract. For example, the Branch Peninsula out of Station 4 has 1,100 calls in the last year. Out of those 1,100 calls, the ones that were on the contract itself that are for house fires, grass fires, and vehicular accidents, those are the only 3 things that we asked for in our contract. That makes up 400 calls. However, the call out of that 400, 200 are Bridgewater, which gets paid separately on a contract. So there's 200 of the 1,100 calls that are actually what we contracted for.
I think a lot of it, what's really important for you to know is that we have a separate contract for EMS that the county spends another $1 million a year for. So EMS, cities don't have to respond unless they're part of that contract, and it's a contract that has a number of cities involved. So EMS, that coverage is not what we're talking about. You have that coverage. It's also, I think it's important to know that any of the MUDs should have their own contract and be covered as well. If they don't, they need to get one in place as soon as they can. That's going to be critical for them. In addition, I know everybody's mostly what you're concerned about is who's going to come if we call. Our fire marshal will ultimately ask another fire department to take over this area. I don't know which one it's going to be yet, and I don't know if he knows tonight, but it's probably going to be a volunteer fire department. But even if that volunteer fire department needs assistance, they'll continue to get assistance even from Princeton on their mutual aid agreements. So you're not going to go without coverage, and I think that's probably the most important thing for everybody to know tonight.
Well, and that's under the condition that the cities maintain their mutual aid agreements, which I'm pretty sure they will, because there's basically state laws that said you're under mutual aid to everybody else that has, a fire department license. If you're a fireman, you're mutual aid to everybody else. And there's even certain grants that they could receive and certain employment that those firemen can receive just for participating as a Texas state fireman. And I can't see that they are not going to respond to a call when called. We're already seeing it in the area around Melissa. You have Weston that has some very long response times, and they'll call for mutual aid as well. Melissa's getting there about the same time or ahead of Weston whenever it's on the southeast side of the city. We're talking now, the call response time's longer. But they still have fire coverage, and they still have EMS services that are coming out.
Yeah. The 2 places that you'd be most impacted is response times and potentially your insurance rates. There's no question that you can be impacted in those areas. You ready to take some minutes?
Yeah, take for example, Bridgewater, they're paying around $29 and something per house per month. That amounts to like roughly $360 a year. The amount that I've kind of personally analyzed on the ESD side that would be a tax rate that's roughly equivalent to that is about 7.5 cents. And when I went out and looked at all the cities that are in my precinct, the amount of their operations budget ranged from low 6 cents to as much as 13 cents on the 100. So, and it averaged out, kind of in that range. So, 7.5 to 8 cents on the 100 would be roughly that $360 that Bridgewater pays individually. But that's really kind of the cost of maintaining fire service, through an ESD or for a city like Princeton. That's what it's costing them to service down to a MUD. But that's also pretty universal. It happens. It's everywhere. I mean, that's kind of the cost that people are having to pay. Someone pays. Someone's always going to pay. It's just whether or not it's being subsidized by a city out to the unincorporated, or the entire county is subsidizing to the unincorporated areas, which it has been to date. It's just now with the constraints in budget, where the budget can only increase 3.5% a year. And I don't know if y'all understand what the impact is on that. Obviously, it's a little bit less tax that you're going to receive every year if a governmental entity has to actually increase. But if they increase over 3.5% per year, it has to go to a rollback election. And I don't know how many people are going to sign up and say, yes, increase my taxes. So, especially if they find out that there's 1.2, the county right now is roughly 1.2 million people. 60,000 in the unincorporated area, you would have to, if we were just to arbitrarily increase taxes to cover what the cities potentially could ask for, it will likely push us over the 3.5%, and it will go to a rollback election. That's impactful in a couple ways. One, I doubt it's going to pass. And when it doesn't pass, there's also kind of a poison pill in forcing a rollback election, which pushes you to the previous year's budget. When that happens, that means there's been no increase for the year, so we'll actually be letting people go across the full range of county operations, cutting salaries. It would be, it'd be very unfortunate. It'd be a very big negative, especially when right now we're looking at all the growth. We're having to add people just for the jail. There's probably a need right now to add 80 detention officers.
And I know that there was some commentary in Princeton about those citizens paying taxes and subsidizing the unincorporated area. Of course, the county covers everybody, so if the county takes those expenses on, the people that live in the cities would be paying through their taxes as well. So one way or the other, it's going to increase somebody's taxes. The difference is the ESD, and we have to be cautious because we are not supposed to advocate for or against the ESD. Just like in a bond program, as officials, we're not supposed to say you should or should not vote for that. We could give you some information only, but there's no question. If ESD is adopted, there's going to be more dollars available to either contract directly with the cities again, compensate them, or to beef up volunteer fire departments and perhaps over time making them into more professional fire departments. But there is a cost associated with it. Any way you go, there's going to be a cost associated with it. I don't know if everyone's ready for questions.
Yeah, I think I think a lot more information will come out from questions if we want to start taking some questions.
If anybody needs a card for a question, would you please raise your hand and Dwayne or I will come by and give you a card.
And I have one question for the audience. Could everyone that is south of 380 raise your hand? Everyone that's north of 380 raise your hand. Okay, so that's the breakdown. I have roughly north of 380, and Commissioner Fletcher is, or not Fletcher, but we're messing it up. Commissioner Williams is south of 380. Commissioner Fletcher is also north of 380 with me, different commissioner.
The first question is, in case of a wildfire, my main concern is how are we all getting out of here?
That's a definite concern. There's really only one way in and one way out. Well, three. If you're on the tip at 982, it's pretty difficult to get out. You know, we had discussion in the past about the potential for another bridge over Lake Lavon, and the Corps of Engineers has very emphatically indicated that there be no such approvals made to that. We are working on a number of roadways in the area. Both the City of Princeton is working on those that are within their district. The county we're operating we meet regularly. Every quarter we meet with Princeton to talk about this area. 546 continues to be something that we are diligently working on, and we'll be having some discussions in Commissioner's Court soon about 546, I think, because TxDOT has slowed that project down very dramatically because of a lack of funding. So we're going to be having some conversations about that as well. But when you're on a peninsula without bridges, it's going to be difficult in the future. It's going to continue to be difficult. But what we can do is try and improve the roadways that we do have to make them where they can carry more traffic.
I choose to comment on that. I think if there's a wildfire, I'm going to go jump in the lake. Is there anybody else that wants to comment on that question? I don't see anybody at the microphone, so we'll move on. I do have one question that I want to ask. The Branch Fire Department was taken over by the city. They got all of the land, they got the building, they got all of the equipment, and I feel like they need to give it back to us. And I wonder how we go about doing that.
More conversation with the city. The county was not a party to that exchange, but I think we have communicated that certainly if they're not going to cover the area where the fire station is, that the land, the building, the assets should be returned to a volunteer fire department if it's reconstituted. I feel very strongly that that's important for the city to be willing to do that. We have not heard whether they will or they will not.
And I watched the meeting this last week, and the mayor had even commented on it that he thought that would be the right thing to do. And I think there was a lot of nods up on the city council that, if the fire department was to be reconstituted, that, they would try to work something out to get the assets back.
Are they going to close?
Can you come up here, sir? Can you come up here? So everybody can hear your question. Thank you.
Is there plans to close the branch station?
It's already closed.
It's already closed. So their fire protection is coming from the city of Princeton out to Bridgewater?
I think it will be closed upon the next budget year is what my guess is. But, the city council person might actually have more.
Station number 4.
Yeah, station number 4.
$4 million to buy the fire department and
Sir, can you come up here so you can kind of share? Sorry. You said you wanted to be vocal.
Sure.
Use the mic.
Sure.
They got to put the mic in their mouth.
How you doing?
Mics. I know. Go ahead.
Okay.
The budget for the fire department right now in Princeton is $2.1 million. They spent $2.4 million last year to buy some fire trucks and to buy the branch fire station. They just put an ad out to hire 15 more firemen, and their budget, the city budget, is ridiculous. It's $68 million, and they bring in $61 million. I mean, the numbers just don't add up. They're not hurting for money. They got 3,000 more houses that they're going to build, or they're under construction already. What are they going to do with the tax money from 3,000 more houses when they only have 1,097 houses now? I don't get it. This is just scare tactic so that they can put us into the city, get us to agree to be annexed. And once we're annexed, where my project is from, taxes will go up 35% once you're annexed. So we don't want to be annexed, and I actually want to get out of the ETJ. So I don't know what the deal is, except it's another government scam. They're wasting money, and then they're saying they don't have enough. Sorry about that.
I'll say in the city's defense, in the city council's defense, I can't see the city council approving annexations coming in unless it's very clean and there's going to be, some dollars coming with it, from the developer to be able to provide for it. Because, how else? They already have a moratorium on building on new permitting, and they already have such a massive amount of need right now for additional police and fire. I can't see them, because here's the thing. Whenever you annex somebody, you have 5 years to provide the same level of service that you're providing to the rest of the city. If not, the person that's getting annexed can turn around and get all their tax dollars back that they've paid in. It's a penalty to the city to annex and then not provide service. So I can't see them providing, annexing people and just to get the dollars, because those dollars come with an obligation that they would have to pay back. So it just didn't.
Yeah. Well, in addition, you have to be contiguous in order to voluntarily annex. If you live in a MUD, it's very unlikely that there would be any kind of annexation, because if a city annexes a MUD, they have to take on all of their debt. So you almost never see MUDs being annexed. It's a very rare event. It would be very costly for a city to annex a MUD.
Darrell knows it. They tried to forcibly annex me in my other project.
Please don't talk about it. Please don't talk about it.
Well, let me say, a MUD that's already in place and has already been created, they're very difficult to annex. Prior to development, I think there's no question that they would try and get you to annex.
Response that might help him.
If you guys want to talk, you have to come up to the mic, and it has to be on the subject.
The subject is the branch fire station.
So if they close the branch fire department, or the station number 4, and they install a volunteer fire department out here, which we're actually got too much population for a volunteer fire department. If they do that, they will automatically answer calls within the city's district. Correct?
That's right.
If Branch has a volunteer fire department there, the city is no longer there. They're the quickest ones. So that
The irony of that situation is that if there's a branch fire department that's reconstituted, they would have the contract with the county. They would actually, or the ESD, they would receive the money even if mutual aid's given from Princeton down. So the demand for service is still going to be there. If they're honoring their mutual aid agreements the way they're supposed to, they're going to do work no matter what for free. And they're also increasing their cost by $360,000 to $400,000 a year, because they're losing dispatch and radio that they got through the contract with us, as well as losing the stipend, amount that we're paying into the city.
as big a population as we have out here now, I don't think a volunteer fire department will ever work. I mean, that's just...
I'm going to clarify something. I'm hearing some questions about what is a mud, right? Is that I'm hearing
Okay,
that?
yeah.
Could you give a brief description of what a mud is?
Okay, a MUD is a municipal utility district. They are created either by the legislature or at TCEQ. They are independent subdivisions of the state, and they sell bonds for all the infrastructure, and the people that live within that MUD pay taxes to the MUD to repay that infrastructure costs. Where we've seen a proliferation of them since the changes to the annexation laws. That was to be expected. I think that was the intent by the legislature, because I think the legislature believes that we have a shortage of affordable housing, and they want to see more housing built within the state everywhere. We had not seen this previously very much in North Texas, but has now become the most prevalent way of the development is occurring. So the county does not approve MUDs. The city does not approve a MUD. They are approved, the creation of the MUD is approved at the state level. Most of them now are going through TCEQ because if there's any controversy at the legislature, it's easier to get them through TCEQ. It takes a little longer, but it's an easier pathway to get them done. So that Bridgewater is a large MUD. There's several other. TCEQ. I'm so sorry. That's the Texas Environmental Quality, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And so they submit their plans to CEQ, they are reviewed there, and if they are approved there, that there's no regulation of MUDs. Counties, unlike cities, counties don't have zoning. We have no zoning powers. We cannot regulate density. We just have a lot fewer development powers to regulate development than cities do, and that's the other reason why you see a proliferation of MUDs out in the county, because there's just a lot less regulation.
First of all, Commissioner Hale is my commissioner, so I appreciate that he came today to represent the few of us that are from the north. I live near Climax at this time, but I just wanted to touch on the comment that the gentleman made about the city should have enough money to pay for this stuff. I'm in agreement that they should have enough money, but the city of Princeton has had development agreements with a lot of these big developers that have been here for the last several years, and in some of those contracts they have made agreements to take a reduced amount of taxes from those developments for the next 30 years. So like they have a 30-year agreement. I believe the one with the lagoon says that for the next 30 years, they're going to get about half of the tax money that comes in from that, and the other half will go back to the developer to pay for the roads and things that were in the city.
Yeah. To add to that, if you look at the fact that the population has grown so much inside Princeton, essentially the city has created a whole new city over the last couple of years in terms of population. If you look at the tax rate of what it takes to do that, it's almost like the Bridgewater MUD has sprung up out of nowhere. The tax rate on that MUD is going to be roughly $1 on the 100. It's half that inside the city, and if they're doing 380 agreements, they call them, that's already reducing the amount of taxes they're getting from those areas as well, you now have probably about a quarter of the amount of taxes to build the same infrastructure that's being done down in a MUD area like Bridgewater. So I'm very sympathetic and understand why they're behind on their infrastructure building. I mean, we're just keeping pace at the county level for the entire county, and that's even with some areas growing much slower than the northern half of the county.
I think that you see a lot of the development agreements probably occur because they were outside the city limits, and the city, I'm assuming, speculation, that they would prefer to have had them come into the city and get some tax dollars rather than have them develop as MUDs and get zero tax dollars. But that's... If they didn't make the agreement, the city would get zero. Well, we would get our typical county tax rate, yes.
Hi, my name is Olivia Smith. I live in Ranger Crossing, which is kind of across the street from Bridgewater. So first, I would like to say that this conversation would be a lot easier if our mayor didn't chicken out tonight. And my address says Princeton, Texas. He should be here. So I have concerns about that. And I don't see anybody dangerous here. I don't know why he would be so terrified of, the Peninsula people. What? And they shut down our volunteer fire department to then not provide the services for the contract that they made. I mean, I'm in a mud, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I'm being told that our money hasn't been going to them. Well, we've been paying it. Where's it going?
The MUDs, every MUD that exists actually has an elected board, so they're basically your city council people. So if there's things happening with dollars you're paying on taxes, you have to get with your board, because there's an actual elected board of every MUD that functions just like a city council does. So they have the fiduciary responsibility to be handling your tax dollars effectively, and if they don't do the things they're supposed to do, they need to be held accountable by you.
If your MUD is relatively new and you don't have enough homes built or enough homeowners yet, the board will continue to be the developer. There will be a point which that transitions to people that live within the development. But if it's a very new development, then it may still be the developer.
Oh, hi everybody. I'm just going to throw this little question out. When I first moved here, we donated $5 on our Culleoke water bill to the fire department. Some of you can remember that, and some of you probably know nothing about it. But we had no problem donating that $5 to our fire department. It was a volunteer at that time, and that's all.
That just goes to the kind of history of volunteer fire departments and how they were typically used in rural areas, and they are independent entities, and they fundraise. Sometimes their cities provided some assistance, and counties from time to time provided assistance. But counties we don't have fire departments. It's not something that, unlike cities, we don't typically find counties in the fire business.
So I live in Tillage Farms. It's in a mud area down the street from Bridgewater. And according to federal law supersedes state law and definitely county law. And when we're paying our taxes, that's our mud taxes and our home taxes, Collin County taxes is responsible for sending a certain amount of that money to provide us with a fire department and emergency services. And this is a federal law, not a state law. So I'm really upset because, this is our lives. These are our homes. And y'all are telling us that you're going to shut down the voluntary fire department because they're not getting paid. And what happened to our money in Tillage Farms that you can't account for? The taxes that were paid.
We can account for every bit of your Collin County taxes. We don't have any information about your MUD taxes. Your MUD taxes, you would have to go to your MUD board and ask them how they would account for those.
So we paid our MUD taxes at the Collin County Tax Office.
And that's a contract between the tax assessor collector and the MUD. And then he takes those dollars in for the MUD, and he disperses them out to the MUD board.
That does not sound right to me. You're a county office. You're responsible for accounting for all the taxes, wherever they come from.
You know what? Why don't we let our county administrator explain how taxes work that are coming in from a MUD to the tax assessor. Tax assessor is also an independent elected official.
It's not only med, we're also paying homeowners taxes.
Well, you're...
Yeah, so on your tax bill, you're going to have Princeton ISD, you would have your tillage farms tax, you would have a county tax, you may have a water district tax, all those individual entities, the tax assessor collector, who is an elected official, he collects all that money and he disperses it out to each individual government. So all those dollars, I'm sure he can account for to the penny. Now, what the boards of those different elected entities actually do with it, I don't know. That's, well, except for the county side. We obviously know what the county does with it. And there is a small amount that's going towards fire protection services that we have budgeted. And that's the entire county is providing for that amount of dollars. It's actually dedicated primarily to the unincorporated area. But we also do, the bulk of our monies go towards the justice system. That is where the lion's share goes. It goes towards courts, and it goes towards the sheriff's office and the county jail. That is the lion's share. We actually get enough money off of car registrations that we haven't had to put money into the road public works side of it for 7 years now. So you notice? Yeah, unfortunately. Hey, and unfortunately, we're suffering from all the building the same way, because we're one of the few counties that actually has gone up to a chip seal standard. And that was fine 10 years ago, but all the heavyweight trucks running across this stuff just is destroying the roads. We actually just rebuilt a road in Farmersville, 557, that got destroyed in 1 week. And we actually shut the road down and are having to put a different surface on it that's far more expensive, just because it's going to get destroyed, because the load of heavyweight trucks that are saving maybe a minute and a half, instead of going down 78, they're cutting through a county road to save a minute and a half of travel time because Google sent them that way. And y'all probably see the same thing, people shooting across Myrick Lane or CR 400, whatever you want to call it, 398. You probably have heavyweight trucks traveling on roads that weren't designed for that. But that's a different issue altogether.
Good evening. This is my first city council, so kind of nervous, but I had some commentary about what I have been here for about, I'd say 4.5 years in Keokuk, and the fire department's been great. They've been, responding to calls that happen down in a Shamrock Park, and just to find out that we're not going to be getting help, that doesn't make sense to me. So it's like, why? This is part of, our address is part of Princeton. So why would Princeton just not help out?
What Princeton just said, that they're not going to respond outside of their city limits. So if you don't live within their city limits, they're saying that they're not going to respond to those calls. However, they will respond to mutual aid calls. And that's what will happen, is whoever the fire marshal, do you know who you're going to assign this to yet?
Do it?
I'm looking at do you know who's going to get the area yet? No. So your fire district will be assigned to a fire department.
So
we don't know exactly which one it's going to be, but it's going to be assigned to a fire department. And if they can't respond quickly enough, they will make a call for mutual aid, and that will most likely go to Princeton, who will then respond, as long as they continue to honor their mutual aid agreements. Which I think it would be remarkable. We've never seen a fire department refuse to honor mutual aid agreements.
But what doesn't make sense is, why would you take out Branch Fire Department and then put in Princeton number 4 if Princeton's just not going to, if they just say, oh, we're going to cut it out?
I agree that doesn't make sense, but you had different city manager at the time, you had different council members at the time. So for whatever reason, this is a choice that Princeton has made. I'm not even sure that it's been approved by council. I think this is a city manager decision. So you got something in there?
Yeah. I wanted to add on to that. One of the things, too, that's a little bit different between, and this goes to county versus city difference, every contract and every expenditure over $2,500, the county commissioners court votes on that. We review all policy decisions, everything. So that's a huge difference between cities and the county. You probably see us or hear from us more on policy issues and expenses and dollars and cents things more than individual city council people. Usually it's the city manager, because the city council empowers the city manager more than we can empower Mr. Kim to actually do stuff for us, because we have a constitutional responsibility to do certain things. So if you were to ask all the city council people of Princeton, hey, why did you cancel this contract? You know, they actually didn't take a vote on it. They didn't vote on it to cancel it. And how it came about, I would imagine at this point probably isn't to their liking. In the way, at least in the way it came out, they probably would have liked some pre-education, some other things. They actually have acknowledged that. They said that in the meeting.
Well, the thing is that it came out of nowhere. Everyone in, Keokuk and Branch and Water, Blue Water and all these other areas, they're like, why are y'all doing this? And, it came as a shock to everybody because, we've had help for so long.
Yeah, it surprised me too. I would have expected that there would have at least been some discussion leading into it between our county administrator to the city manager, seeing as essentially the city manager made the decision. It's on him because the council didn't vote on it. So it's the city manager that elected to do whatever he did. Now, I would have hoped that a discussion would have happened prior, but it didn't happen, and we're kind of where we're at now. I know that our county administrator has been discussing things with him, and I know they've got some discussions going on.
I'm going to help clarify something. I heard you say that whatever happens, we are going to be taken care of. Did I hear that clearly?
You did.
Whatever happens, what?
Everybody clap.
We're going to be taken care of.
Whatever happens, we're going to be taken care of. I heard that. Write it down.
Now, is this only going to be temporary? Because
They don't have you.
Might be more response time.
I'm going to leave my glass.
Listen, let me point out that you could have reduced response times and you could be impacted, your insurance could be impacted. So it's not to say that there's going to be no negative impact. There certainly could be some negative impact, but nobody's going to sit and watch your house burn down.
Yeah, I'm going to respect her and let her go first. Are you through?
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Jerry Maimoni, and I live on 438 in Princeton, Texas. At least that's the address on my mail, on our mail and everything. And I really don't understand what all's going on. I do know there's a lot of veterans here. I'm a veteran, and I serve my country proudly. And I don't know why we're going back and forth. I mean, I've been paying taxes before you were even born. I don't, and I fought so that y'all can sit up there. I fought so people could sit up there in town and make some decent decisions, okay? But my question right now, and thanks for all your service, everybody, is who do we call for fire now? Who do we call for an ambulance? Who do we call for a vehicle collision? 911, what do we do? What's up? Y'all got an answer for that one?
911.
Okay, and where will it go to?
I don't think, well, right now it's still going to go to Princeton until October.
Okay. All right. So you don't really know just 911,
It hasn't
which
been,
goes.
there will be a fire department that's assigned to this area. The fire
Okay.
marshal will make that assignment.
But I do know that when you go back to up there where y'all sit down and decide what to do, you got a lot of veterans here. We died, we served our country. Most men didn't even come back so that we could have reasonable decisions made. And we need your help. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and we understand that.
All right.
And I appreciate that as well. I'm a veteran, so I appreciate your fellow service. And this is important to me because it affects everybody in this room, no matter where you live. Because if you travel outside of Princeton city limits proper as a Princeton citizen, that is an official city-dwelling Princeton citizen, and you're traveling on a road to get to McKinney or Plano or anywhere else, and you're driving through an unincorporated area, are you now not going to get service if you have a car accident? I mean, this is safety for everybody everywhere in the county, because there's people that live inside the city of Princeton that could have car accidents outside the city. And I mean, there's a high likelihood that can happen, when you're, because 380 is what it is. 546 is what it is.
We pay Princeton taxes right there, so why wouldn't they sit there? I got a Princeton address, even though I'm in Culleoka, so why you sitting there saying we're not going to sit there and get help?
Yeah, I mean, you will get assistance, but the response time could suffer. And we've already seen it in the Weston area. For Weston to respond on the southeast side of Melissa, it's 30 to 40 minutes. Yeah, so I mean,
I sure see them back up sheriff's department when they come out here.
Yeah.
So, my name is Amisha Neal. I actually live in the city. So, what I am going to say is, as everyone here is coming up saying, and first of all, let me address Cyndi, when you said the mayor wanted, he's actually in a CDC meeting because we are asking for an audit.
We got the audit.
Thank you, Christina. So they're actually voting on it. So he's not afraid to show up, but when you want official business and when you want answers, you go to the city that you want it out of. Next, it's not agreed, because if he did, he would be here. What I will tell you, again, you need to not do that. Also, we pay city and county taxes as well. We pay school taxes. We pay all of these taxes as a citizen of Princeton. The people outside are not paying the Princeton taxes. Hold on, because I let you talk. Hold on, you can come later.
I want to know how long you've lived here.
I've lived here 10 years.
I've been here for 59 years.
Okay, have you paid Princeton taxes? Okay, and I don't? And I don't?
And say you.
What I am saying to you, we pay city taxes that pays for our fire department. We are asking for the county, not y'all, because we all pay county taxes. We're asking for them to figure it out, to make sure Princeton is still coming out here and helping everybody. It's frustrating to see and hear all of this go on constantly when we live in a county that is the second richest in Texas. You can make this work. Figure it out. And all of y'all working together instead of pushing the blame. And this is another thing that I've heard. Since you've been up here, you spoke on behalf of Princeton instead of speaking on behalf of the county, which is who these people actually pay. Figure it out for them and do the right thing.
I just want to remind you that people out here had cards with questions on them, And the idea was that you were supposed to come up and talk only about the question, and that has not been happening. So I'm going to ask anybody in this line that's not talking about the Branch Fire Department to please sit down right now. Thank you.
My name's Stuart Moody. I sat there and moved here in 1988. I sat there and bought my house. It was built in 1982 from Roy Dale Rogers right there. I live right before Ticky Creek. And man, y'all are like filibusters. Y'all sit there and shut everybody down. But you know, I'll sit there and pay Princeton taxes. My kids went through Princeton. Y'all sit there and say you're going to shortchange emergency care. And every time the Sheriff's Department comes out here, Princeton comes right behind them. You got all these new houses that are being built. We have our power turned off all the time because y'all are installing water or you're sitting there doing power. We're like 3 or 4 hours without in the summertime because all of these new houses, fastest growing city in Texas right there, and y'all sit there, and because y'all are sitting there trying to make too much money, and now y'all are overextended because there's no roads. Yeah, all the roads we pay for on our county taxes and everything else. You don't pay them. We pay them right there. And then they shut the roads down. And then we can't even sit there and get to work and back because, because of all these thousands and thousands of houses. And you have all those ones that's right over there at Goat Road and stuff coming around. Huh?
I don't think you're talking about
I'm sitting there talking about Culleoka right there. Why we don't need to annex to Bruce Beecham would be embarrassed about y'all. Okay, well, there you go. Because y'all don't want to sit there and hear the fact that, you know, y'all are sitting there trying to annex us in the Princeton.
Bless his heart, he's angry. My name is Jackie Payne. I live on 546, and somebody needs to pat me on the back because I'm not dead yet. I was part of the Branch Fire Department for 10 years, and I am proud to be sitting behind a row of folks that were in it for all 35 years that it existed. Yes. We have our chief here, our assistant chief here, the chief's wife, and Markle. Russell, Chris. When we gave up the Branch Fire Department, it was not an easy decision. It was not something that everybody said, oh, well, let's hurry up and give it to Princeton. No, that was not it at all. We loved our fire department, and we were very good. I would put our firemen that were trained firemen up against anybody, anywhere, anytime. And the sad thing is that a great many of our people that were our firemen have gone on to other fire departments. My own son works for Louisville. And anyway, long story short, is that it was not an easy decision. And with all of the growth, it was not feasible. We were making so many calls a year that, and stop and think about this for just a minute, in today's traffic, okay? We came for the calls, they came from all over the area. Honey, you can't get there from here now. You cannot get there. You cannot get to the fire department on time. You can't get there to make a medical call. You can't get there to make a fire call because of the traffic. It's not feasible. And so it was not, and when all of these big developments started coming in, they needed more fire protection than we could give. And we were getting older, and it just became something that the head people of that department prayed about and grieved about, but that's what it was. And I would say to you that if you want us to have a department down here, that it needs to be manned 24/7, just like the Princeton is. Somebody needs to be paid to be there because you can't get there on time. And so the county needs to know how important it is to have somebody at that station 24/7. Thank you.
I had many conversations with Jimmy Knipp about the difficulty of getting people to be there in a time, and the difficulty of getting people to the station. So there's no question, we recognize that. I don't think anybody, also, when that decision was made, I don't think anybody believed that Princeton would choose then to abandon it at that point. So I think one of the options would be to reconfigure or reinstitute a volunteer fire department, and we can hope that and try and get Princeton to give back the assets from that fire department.
So my name is Amy White. I've lived here just over a year now, and I live in Tillage Farm, which is part of the Bridgewater MUD. So my understanding, because we can't get all the stakeholders in a room, we can't get our MUD, we can't get the City of Princeton, County Commission, because they're all different entities, and we understand that. We kind of got, I feel like, bad mouthed by the City of Princeton and their mayor by saying, hey, you guys only paid 6 months of fees and we didn't get paid. Well, it turns out, based on our MUD attorney, that, hey, when they took over the branch department, they just stopped collecting. That seems like a Princeton problem. You need an auditor, a finance person, accountant, I don't know, somebody. There was a contract, obviously, Branch had with Bridgewater, and apparently, I guess, probably had with 4 and 10, too. I don't live in those MUDs, but they probably had them, and they just stopped collecting on those, too. There was also, from what I understand, the people who lived outside of MUDs were paying $7.50 a month to Colioka for fire services. Where is that? So we're wanting to, we know Branch isn't, we're not in an area that a volunteer fire department makes sense anymore. There's several thousand of us who live here now. There's several hundreds of houses that are going to be built in the next couple of years. Where is the opportunity for us to get the stakeholders, the people who have the contracts? That's our MUD, so great. We need to get MUD 2, 4, and 10 in the room, and maybe however they collected that $7.50 in the past. I get it. We are higher density. Maybe because I'm fixing to start paying today $30 a month to the MUD for my fire protection. That's how they've arranged it now. We're not going to pay it on our MUD taxes anymore. I'm going to pay it personally, $30 a month, starting June 1st. And that's everybody in Bridgewater. I don't know what 4 and 10 is. So really, that's the question, is because I don't know what a MUD is. I didn't know what it was until I signed my closing documents. I'm a new homeowner. I bought out here because it's affordable. I had a child. I wanted a home that I could own and stop paying $2,600 a month to an apartment that I would never own. So I'm just asking you, I understand that Branch went away, and so where did that buck drop? Because we have contracts that didn't get paid, and I don't know if that Princeton wasn't asking for the money, and because it seems like we wanted to pay it, Princeton just wasn't asking for it, and it seems like they were paying other fees. We're just not paying that anymore. So as citizens, how do we get all the stakeholders in the room? So we have, this is great, but every time we have a meeting, we have the city in there, which is great. That represents the city. We have you guys, county commissioners. You don't represent us in the MUD. You don't represent the city. How do we get it in there? Because we've determined that volunteer fire department is not going to be the answer. ESD is great, but that's going to be, what did they say, 2 years out before that's a real decision. So how do you get everybody in the room to have an honest conversation? Because I feel like I have a 3-year-old at home. I don't want to know that her home is going to burn down and that we worked very hard to establish for her. Because it might take Princeton 30, 45 minutes to get all the way out here on the peninsula.
as far as getting stakeholders together, I know that Commissioner Hale and I agreed to come out. I think we'd agree to go to any meeting that was set up. I can't speak for your MUD board or your MUD attorneys or the city of Princeton, but we're always available.
All right. I live on the north side, but I got a question on the branch. After watching the City Hall meeting over in Princeton last week, I heard the fire chief explain that for the last few years, he saw the shortages on funding with the contracts across the county, and that they knew that they were going to have to back out at some point. Why would they take on branch volunteer fire department if they knew that there was a shortcoming like he forecasted? He said for the last few years.
I'm not sure. He's also a new fire chief too, so he's new in charge.
He said a few years they had a shortcoming coming from.
Well, and here's the thing. The dollars, ever since the contract was created, never covered all the expense. It never was intended to cover all the expense. I mean, it was just a supplement initially for volunteer fire departments and then for the city. It's never, ever covered everything. And that's just because counties don't do fire departments unless most of the counties that actually have a fire department have an emergency services district set up. Actually, most of them have 2 emergency services districts set up that are stacked on top of each other, one for fire and one for ambulance, and they typically divide the services between those 2. But it was never intended that way. Also, this also gets back to maybe a misunderstanding between some of the fire chiefs and how things work in a city and how they work at the Commissioner's Court. There was never a request that came into our county administrator. There was never a request that came into our budget. There was never a request of any of the individual, at least from my perspective. No one ever came to me until Jimmy Knapp actually called me a week before budget this last year and said, hey, what's going on? How are y'all going to increase this? And
is that with every city that's dropped out or just Princeton?
No one's come to us.
Okay.
No one's come to us. I will say Melissa came to us and just asked us about what do we think about them dropping out, but they never had an ask for dollars either. No one has come to us until we've almost extracted it out of them to give us a dollar amount that would cause them to renew service at least for the next year. Princeton, the city manager basically, I think he thought I was lying to him because I said in a closed session that we hadn't received any numbers. We asked for numbers and we didn't get numbers back until, once again, I started really pressing the point and said, hey, city manager, can you please send me the documents of just the run numbers and the call numbers to me that were sent to me, supposedly? And then I would get a call back saying, oh, well, it's going to take a week. Oh, I get another call back. Oh, it's going to take another week. We actually don't have those. They weren't sent to me. Princeton, I finally got run numbers in February. And those were just run numbers with some kind of fuzzy math on an Excel spreadsheet, one page of an Excel spreadsheet. But once again, that's not even a formal request. It just is some kind of numerical analysis on a spreadsheet. And the reason I didn't get it, they sent them to Wiley, and they didn't come, and he expected Wiley to represent Princeton and send them to us. So we've had a lot of problems having communication back and forth. I think I've actually had pretty good communication with a couple of city council people in Princeton, at least having some communication back and forth, but it surprised me, caught me off guard whenever Princeton canceled the contract. It surprised me. And once again, there was no call made from the city manager to anyone on our budget, any of our staff that said, hey, this is our request, this is what we need to renew the contract. So it's almost like it's not even about dollars. Some of it is still angst about some of the things that have happened at the state level that, just some of the different laws that have been passed, I understand, they're mad, I get it. We're affected by some of the same things.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, I had talked to Darrel Hale before the meeting last Tuesday night, and he had told me that the city had never come to him with any kind of idea or proposition for increasing the budget that he said that he would be willing to look into before the meeting, and I guess still not until this day. So the city has never approached the commissioners with a proposition to say, all right, you're paying $950,000 now, how about paying $1.5 million? They've never done that. And the other thing is that the city has been, I'm going to say taking advantage of, that might be the wrong word, so please forgive that, but they've been doing more calls than they told them to do. And so they've been getting more money. They were 1,100 calls. 200 of them were actually the ones that they asked them to do and to pay for. Now, I think if they took that money for 200 calls versus 1,100 calls, they might be able to afford that. So I think we need to look at that. Don't you think? Thank you. The question that I have from somebody is, how much does the county give for an incorporated fire?
We give nothing to cities for their fire coverage.
Say that again.
We give no dollars to incorporated cities, if that's the question. For inside the city limits, we don't make any. We pay for no fire coverage within a city's limits.
So, would you be willing to look into the possibility of making sure the city only does the fire calls and the ambulance calls that we have them budgeted for?
Okay. Was your first question, how much does the county pay for city calls within the city limits?
No, within an incorporated area is what I said.
Unincorporated areas.
I said unincorporated. Did I say incorporated? I'm sorry. Unincorporated area. Sorry.
Well, it depends. There's a formula that the fire marshal has identified. That, so it's $950,000 overall, but it depends on the calls. I think what we're getting at is we have coverage for EMS. The county pays for emergency services, for ambulance service, and so that's not even a part of what we're talking about. You will always have your ambulance service available to you. We're only talking about house fires, grass fires, and car accidents, and that's what we intended for the county's dollars to go toward.
Thank you for your clarification. Anybody that has anything to talk about cost?
Yeah, Mr. Kim, if you want to address some of the dollar amounts of what the amounts that of value given to the city of Princeton.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yoon Kim. I am the county administrator. Just to present you all some clear information, the county budgets $950,000 to various cities to cover their fire districts. This is for fire protection only. The county provides a separate $1 million for EMS. Princeton is actually the holder of the ambulance contract, and so we set aside $1 million for that. For FY 2025, for Princeton to cover their fire district, we give Princeton $170,000 for fire protection only. That's structure fires, grass fires, and motor vehicle accidents. And we also gave $188,000 for dispatch. That's a dispatch radio. So total combined, it's $360,000.
Within the limits, city limits?
That is not within, that is to cover the unincorporated area that's covered by, so if you think of the city of Princeton right here, if you look at the county as a square, each city has a sphere that is their fire district. And so Princeton's fire district covers their ETJ and parts of the unincorporated. And Fire Marshal Browning creates that map, and every city has a little area. And we pay you to cover that area. So the county, obviously, we try to pay as much as we can. We pay the city of Princeton to cover that fire district, and then the city also pays the fire department to cover it as well. So $170,000 plus the $188,000 in dispatch, and then ambulance contract is separate. The fire chief in the city council presentation talked about, well, their cost per run, the city's cost per run is $130 per run. But our contract with the city specifically says we want you to cover structure fires and motor vehicle accidents. And so I think roughly, would that be less than 400 actual calls? So it's less than 400 calls. So if you look at $170,000 plus $188,000, and you add it up and you divide it by 400, I mean, that's $800 a call. And so it is more than what I believe that the fire chief is stating. Now, of course, for the fire chief, he's going out there. He's going out there for various things, and he's going out there and responding for more than just fire and motor vehicle accidents, and we understand that and we acknowledge that. But our contract is specifically for fire protection only, grass fires, structure fires, and motor vehicle accidents. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll say that half of his 400 number is covered by the Bridgewater contract, so it's actually even 200. And also, Fire Marshal Browning told me before the meeting that next year's anticipated value of the radio service is going to be in the $240,000 range next year. So it's over $400,000 worth of either pure dollars or value that we're giving to the city of Princeton.
Yes, and so when Princeton says, hey, we're no longer going to be part of this contract, that means they don't want the county's $188 plus $170,000. If you recall, the city of Melissa was the first city to drop out of the fire protection agreement. They sent us a letter, and October 1 of 2024 is when they were out. So Melissa, their fire district is a little smaller. You got the city of Melissa, their fire district. So right now, the fire district didn't change. We have the city of Weston who said, their volunteer fire department said, we'll gladly take Melissa's share of the money and then we'll cover it. And Melissa still responds on mutual aid. So there you go.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for coming. I know it's not really your domain to be covering Princeton Fire. You have a little tendrils out with the county, but we don't really have the Princeton people representing their financial woes in this. So thank you for your attempts to answer. I feel like we are missing a lot of information because the Princeton representatives did not come to share. So, but thank you for your gallant attempts. But anyway, so I was wondering if you know, and you're describing a very complex relationship between the state and the counties and the cities and the outlying areas. And I was just wondering if, up to your knowledge, what legal, so a couple of things, I guess. Is it actually legal for them to just drop us since they have accepted us? Can they just walk away and say, well, we don't want to do it anymore? And then replace it with a lesser service. So you're talking about an increase from maybe 5 or 10 minute response to a 30 to 45 minute responses, which is unacceptable. And so I'm just wondering, just clear, that thing, is that legal for them to do that? And also, then what would it take for us to create? Are they dropping us immediately? You said maybe the fiscal year. When is that? How much time is there to prepare for us to have the services that we require, which is a response time 5 to 10 minutes max? We require that. So what would we, help us figure out how we can construct or create that which we need, and not just, properly, and hold them to the plate for their responsibility as well. I was wondering if you can help us with that. Thank you.
So cities do not are not legally required to provide fire service outside of their city limits, I think, other than through mutual aid. So that they don't have to be dispatched. I mean, if they come to the county and say, we don't want calls from the unincorporated area being dispatched to us, I'm looking at my fire marshal to make sure that I'm getting that right, we cannot dispatch to them. However, whoever that is dispatched, whether it be a Blue Ridge or a Nevada, they can always call Princeton for mutual aid, or any other city for that matter, or any other volunteer fire department for mutual aid, and they would respond at that time. One of the things, I mean, Farmersville was one of the cities that took this path early on, and that's what really, I think, created the situation where residents in that area decided to present the Commissioner's Court with a petition for the Emergency Services District, because this is one way for more dollars to be collected to either pay more to the cities and also to pay more to volunteer fire departments, and really begin to beef up those volunteer fire departments so that they may be able to pay people, they may be able to have 24-hour presence, they may be able to have better equipment. So that's really the route that the folks near Farmersville took, and they were successful in getting enough signatures, and they brought forward that petition to the Commissioner's Court. We hold a public hearing on it on July 21st, and then it would be on the ballot in November. You will have that opportunity to vote for or against that ESD in November. I think there's no question that having an ESD in place provides more dollars to be available to improve fire service across the entire unincorporated areas of the county. So that's definitely an option that could be taken. The way the ESD, it would be voted on in November. The Commissioner's Court sets the first tax rate, the original tax rate, at which time any subsequent tax rates are going to be set by the board. The Commissioner's Court appoints a 5-member board, and that board would control that ESD and how they would negotiate with all the fire departments within the county to provide service across the county. So that's moving forward right now.
Yeah, the next action, so a couple things. The ESD vote, when we're presented with a petition, we have to respond to it, have to answer it. It's not something that the Commissioner's Court initiated on our own. It's impossible. We're not empowered to call an ESD vote. If we're petitioned, we have to answer it. We have to put it on the ballot. The next action is going to be the 28th of July. 28th of July now, there was one commissioner that couldn't be there on the 21st, so we shifted it a week. So there'll be a public hearing that will actually set the limits. Whenever that actually gets voted on in November, it also matters on the different ETJs too, because if a particular ETJ around a city votes it down, then that ETJ would actually get excluded from the ESD individually. Now, keep in mind, the ESD the ETJ around a city only makes up a very small percentage of their fire district typically. For here, I think it ends around County Road 398, something around there. It doesn't even come all the way down to the FM that's on the north side of Bridgewater. So Bridgewater is not even inside the ETJ. So not only is there going to be ESD vote, we have to go back and actually analyze the votes on a per ETJ basis to see where it passed or where it failed. And then the ESD board gets appointed by the Commissioner's Court, and it's up to them to decide how, at that point, to best serve fire protection and ambulance services inside the Emergency Services District. The one good thing about an ESD is that when you vote for it, you know exactly what the dollars are going to be able to be used for. It's going to be only able to be used for emergency services. It's different than having a tax inside a city or a county where you're not really sure what the money is going to be used for. So at least there's some assurance that it's going to be put towards the thing that's literally on the ballot.
I guess my question is, why is there never any talk about cutting costs? Every time government says they're going to raise spending and increase what they're going to spend, they have to take it from the people. But the government never seems to want to, they never go without a raise. We got a new Princeton Fire Department fire chief that makes somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. I don't know what he makes exactly, because he just got hired from another department. But why don't they figure out, do we really need 2 fire trucks at every fender bender? There's got to be a way to analyze that and start to cut some costs instead of grabbing money from us all the time.
Well, that's a Princeton city question. We don't have any authority in the city of Princeton, so I can assure you at Collin County, we have routinely looked at all of our costs and cut many of them in the past. So I can't respond to what the city of Princeton does.
Well, spending in general. I've never heard a government agency cut costs. Why? Aren't you in the government agency?
We have cut costs at the county.
Well, you shifted it. I don't think you cut it.
Collin County has the lowest tax per house in the state by far. We have roughly $780 per house at the Collin County tax. The next closest is Denton County at $1,200. We have taxes that are 40% less than the next closest county. And the cost of a car, the cost of a police vehicle, the cost of materials is the same across the state from place to place. We run very efficiently. We probably have half the amount of courts on a per case basis anywhere else. So from that perspective, I know that we can defend the tax dollars that we spend are used very, very efficiently. We've actually been accused of not spending enough. And even here, y'all want us to spend more money on fire service, which is not something that counties typically do. And I get that. You want to have an easy solution to it. If we were to summarily just raise taxes to pay for fire department services, it will get voted down by all the rest of the county citizens when it goes to rollback election. Because the way that a rollback election states, it says vote yes or no for a tax increase. It is mandated by the state to read a certain way, and that's effectively how it reads. And I would guarantee that it would get voted down. It'd probably be 80-20.
I think it's important to note that we're not just talking about Princeton. Every city would want to have more dollars provided to them. So if you look at every city that we currently give a supplement to, was never intended to cover their costs, just a supplement. If they now want us to cover the entire cost, that's many cities, that cost would be a dramatic increase to our tax rate, which would result in us having to take it to a rollback election. And since the vast majority of people in the county live within the city limits, it's unlikely that such a rollback rate would pass.
Hi, my name is Jerry, and everything I'm hearing tonight seems to be about we don't have the money for the fire or money for whatever. I heard some numbers recently. Princeton's like 37,000 people, something like that.
We can't respond to the budget for the city of Princeton.
I understand. But out of that 37, I also heard the police are estimating there's 15,000 illegal aliens in Princeton alone. If we weren't supporting them, like my wife just went to a couple of hospitals, they were all full. And I asked the staff, well, they're full of illegal aliens in there. We could cut costs on the police, the EMS, the fire, everywhere if we could get rid of the illegal aliens that aren't supposed to be here.
I mean, from the county perspective, we're facing the same thing. There's laws that are passed that we have to house those that are detained by ICE until ICE comes and gets them. That's an additional cost to all the county citizens. I mean, we get impacted by that, but we can't control what individually is happening inside the cities. Whenever we encounter those that are illegal aliens, there are referrals that happen. Whenever they're going to the jail, they get referred out and they will get deported. I mean, you expect rule of law, that's what's happening.
My name is Barry Peterson. I'm one of the minority from the north side. I'm up by Altoga. I'm the HOA president of McKinney Meadows. Regarding the ESD, the people who vote on that are going to be just ETJ folks. It's not going to be city people. It's not, but it is countywide, right? So once the ESD is established, that if there's a station, a fire station built, that's going to take time. It's also going to be, where is that station built? Is it going to be more than one station? That station may be built in north of Frisco, which is even worse for us here. So they could place that station literally anywhere in the county. Is that within the fire district? Is that correct?
That would be correct. However, I think the intent, the immediate intent of an ESD would simply to increase the payments that are going to all of the fire departments that are responding now, whether it be Princeton, Wiley, McKinney, the volunteer fire department. The intent is not to create a new fire department. I think over time you might see that happen, but the immediate effect of an ESD would be to pay those fire departments that are responding closer to their costs, if not cover their costs.
It's just important to understand that, how this all works.
Yeah, the ESD board would make their determination of how to best provide fire service. It takes too long to actually set up a fire department, and the lead time on some equipment is like 2.5, 3 years on some of the trucks. It just is too long, and so it doesn't work without the cities, and that's why the ESD having the ability through that very specific tax to help make cities whole, to where the cities would be able to provide service, is the hope. An ESD down the road, I guess potentially could actually go out and bond. They could potentially, to actually build fire stations, but that is not the intent. In fact, if you look on the Collin County website, there's a page that has a FAQ on it. Basically, you click on the fire truck when you go on our main page, and that'll take you to it. At the very bottom, there's a statement of shared principles, and what we intend when we appoint our commissioners is for them to not build a fire station, so they're not having to pick winners and losers, but to actually try to contract with all the cities that have been providing great service so far. I mean, I heard it from a lot of people tonight that y'all have been getting great service from the Princeton Fire Department. And I would hope that we could come to an agreement, or I say we, that the ESD board that we appoint would be able to come to an agreement to continue that service and make the city council of the city of Princeton say, yes, city manager, we want to provide service again, and if we're made whole, let's do it. And that is an intent of having that ESD tax, is to make them whole.
Yeah, I thought it was important that everybody understood. I knew the answer. I wanted to make sure that everybody else understands the implications of what the ESD is and how that plays out. So, thank you.
We are going to stop public comment because there's no way I'm going to get to the questions otherwise. So we're going to ask the commissioners to answer the questions as they come up. The first thing I was asked to read, though, was Local Government Code Title 11, Public Safety. Subtitle B, County Public Safety, Chapter 352, County Fire Protection, Subchapter A, Protection of County Residents. Section 352.001, Fire Protection of County Residents. The Commissioner Court of a county may furnish fire protection or firefighting equipment to the residents of the county or on any adjoining county who lives outside of municipalities. The Commissioner's Court may purchase fire trucks or either firefighting equipment, issue time warrants, and levy and collect taxes to pay the principal and the interest on the time warrants as provided by law, contract with the governing body of a municipality located within the county, this isn't my writing, sorry, or within an adjoining county to use fire trucks or other firefighting equipment that belongs to the municipality. The Commissioners Court of a county may contract with an unincorporated volunteer fire department that is located within the county to provide fire protection to an area of the county that is located outside the municipalities in the county. The court may pay for that protection from the general funds of the county. Where is our county money going, and why can't we do this?
So your county taxes primarily go to the justice system. We go to the courts, they go to the clerks, it goes to the sheriff, it just goes to the jail, it goes to, and then also to roads and to public health. I think the most important word in what you just read was may. It is not a shall. So counties are not required to provide fire service. Cities are not required to provide fire service. Cities are often incorporated primarily to provide fire service and police service, but counties are not, and we have never provided for fire service, and we don't have a tax rate. Our current tax rate wouldn't support providing fire service. As we've talked about, we'd have to dramatically increase our tax rate to be able to provide fire service at the costs that are being talked about. And that's why the people near Farmers Mill decided that they would petition the Commissioner's Court to create a ESD.
Yeah, just talking about the tax rate just a little bit. So the county tax rate is roughly 15 cents on the 100. If you have a city tax rate that's, say, 45 to 50 cents on the 100, there's a big percentage of that goes towards fire service. We don't have that same amount of tax rate to provide for fire departments in the unincorporated area, even though it is a smaller amount. Now, some people have said, well, if you only raise 3 cents on the 100, you can tax all the rest of the cities and you'll have plenty of money to do that. Well, that puts us into that rollback scenario that we talked about earlier, where the rest of the cities and all those citizens are going to have to vote yes to be taxed more to supplement those outside the city. So that's why the state created ESD, so you could actually have a targeted, focused source of revenue to provide for a service. Now, I suppose that if y'all wanted to initially get a petition, completely opt out of the ETJ of Princeton, and then turn around and request to incorporate, you could create your own city, but then again, you're going to be paying probably 50, 60 cents on the 100. You're going to be paying far more than you would through an ESD, and you'd be slightly less than what you would be paying if you were in a MUD and paying a MUD tax. But there's options for y'all to actually incorporate should you actually want to go that route as well. It's just a lot of work. It also doesn't get us there very quick, and that's why we're hopeful that we can have good communication with the cities to figure out how to bridge until the ESD could come into existence.
Will this affect homeowners' insurance?
It certainly can. It absolutely can.
We've already had a scenario at a MUD that has a contract with the city of Farmersville, where their homeowners insurance, they summarily canceled on them just from the rumor of losing fire protection. And it actually hadn't even come into effect yet, hasn't changed yet, but just the rumor, because it was going to bridge into the next year, they canceled out on them. And so that homeowner was having to go find new fire insurance, and their rates likely went up.
Are ESDs or a volunteer fire department the only two options, and would we be allowed to say no to an ESD?
Read the last part of that.
would we be allowed to say no to an ESD? And then I want to also make sure that they know when the vote would be if we voted for that.
The other option is for us to do exactly what we did before we ever paid cities. And that would be that we just simply supplemented volunteer fire departments. And a fire department, again, is going to be assigned to your district. So while there could be, the result of that could be slower response times, you will continue to have fire coverage. You will continue to have fire coverage. Correct. If the volunteer can't get there and they call for mutual aid, somebody will respond.
Commissioners, I appreciate you sitting here to take these questions. I can tell you we've got a lot of questions from the audience and the community. A lot of them are similar. Maybe worded a little bit differently, but they're trying to get at the point. What is the solution? I'm gonna kind of read a three-part question to you here, and please, both of you, give us input. We're really just looking for what is the solution. We know there's a problem, and we're frustrated with that, but we expect that you guys are going to figure out a solution. And one thing is we all feel that we've been paying taxes all along, and we had a implied service that when we moved here that we would have fire protection, and now it's being taken away. So we're looking to you guys to solve this. So I'm going to just kind of read this three-part question, and you can answer that. So how much would an increase in taxes be to fund the services needed? What is the interim plan? And why has the county not provided an increase to the city as growth has increased since 2015 with hundreds of more residents? We see a lot of roofs here, and a lot of taxes are still going and increasing the budget or the income for the county. And can the county not increase fire protection operating budget without establishing an ESD? Thanks.
The county cannot create an ESD on its own. It has to be a petition from the public. And we only recently, January? In January, we received a petition, but we do not have the authority to create an ESD on our own. It has to come from the public. The amount of money that the Commissioner's Court has designated for fire protection was never intended to be, and I think all of the fire departments were aware that it was intended to be a supplement to them. It was not intended to cover their costs. We've never intended to cover their costs. And again, it was originally intended just for volunteer fire departments who had to raise their own money and didn't have taxing ability. And we later provided some of those dollars to the cities because they felt like they were having to respond to too many calls. If they chose to go out to not provide those service to those calls, then those dollars will be shifted to a different fire department who is willing to respond.
Could you recap real quick, or let me at least see the question? I'll try to address them.
Clarify. First part of the question is how much would an increase in taxes be to fund the services needed? We did not ask for the county to establish ESD. We asked, can the county supplement the cost to not establish an ESD? So the city is saying we have these costs, and the county is not coming up with the money. But they're pointing to the city saying you guys need to come to us. Well, I say you guys are my commissioners. You go to the city and figure it out. But what is the interim plan? I think you've kind of answered that we will have service, but it will be at far greater distance for us. And then the last part is. I think that explains it.
So one of the problems is that the primary services that are the core services that Collin County provides, we've had to deal with all of that growth and increase expenditures on all those other things as well. I don't know if any of you have been around the Collin County campus recently to see all the growth that's occurring there, or is anticipated to be happening there over the next few years. I mean, the jail is growing in size. We're adding another administration building because we are bursting at the seams. We can't actually add more people to even add additional services. The jail, I mean, they actually operate in a different mechanism. As the population's grown, there's a certain percentage, which is roughly about 1% of the population is in the county jail at any particular time. So, I mean, we're maxed out. We're actually shipping people outside the county right now because we don't have enough room in our current jail to house detainees. And also, we've let out as many misdemeanor people as we can. The jail is about 90% felons right now. So it has increased dramatically. And when the jail increases in size, it's a mandatory minimum amount of detention officers that you have to actually staff the jail. So that's where any of the growth, the new tax dollars have gone towards, is going towards that. And once again, to reiterate what Commissioner Williams said, the amount of money that was paid as a supplement was never intended to cover the cost and make whole. In fact, the ESD actually doing that would be something new in and of itself to actually increase the amount of dollars. From that perspective, I don't know what the exact amount's going to be. We're going to look at it. You know, that's something that the county administrator is going to be looking at. But it'll be between 7.5 to 10 cents roughly is what I'm anticipating the Commissioner's Court settling on for just the unincorporated area. Now, if we were just to do it arbitrarily, to answer the other part of the question, if we just did it inside the county tax rate, it's going to push us over that rollback limit. And when it fails, I just know it will fail in my heart of hearts. It will fail to be ratified. It will push us back to last year, to the budget we're in right now. But we're going to have all the additional needs that are being requested of this particular budget to include more detention officers, more patrol officers, more court staff. All the other things would then suffer from the intent to increase to an amount that, you know, of a few million extra dollars that is needed. To put it on scale, the amount of new growth that's anticipated in this year might only generate between like $10 and $12 million in new growth revenue that doesn't account against the tax rate. Just keeping up with the Joneses and just keeping salaries where they need to be to keep our employees from leaving and going somewhere else is about $10 to $12 million. And that's before any new request for any new detention officers, any new patrol officers, any new anything. You know, it's just inflation's hit us pretty hard and the growth has hit us hard simultaneously. So it's been a double whammy. So that's why it's been talked about dollars coming from the city and the county, is because of the combination of inflation and growth at the same time.
And we're not just talking about Princeton. So if we were to increase Princeton's dollars, we would have to do that for every other city that's providing services. So we're not talking just about Princeton. We're talking about cities across the county. That really starts to make the numbers go up dramatically.
Thank you. At a city council meeting, a city council person said that a $1,500 administration fee to be assessed on ETJ residents to cover fire services would be a good idea. The proposed starting tax rate for the ESD that is being floated around is only 5 to 8 cents per hundred in property value. That would be $500 a year for a $500,000 home. According to the county appraisal value, the tax obligation to most of the ESD would be around $125 to $200 a year, respectively. Does the county believe that this $1,500 administration fee would be a fair value to the residents of the ETJ, or would it be more fair to do the ESD?
I don't know where they would have come up with a $1,500 a year number. That seems pretty high. But I mean, if that's what the city, and this is the same kind of negotiation that we would have, this county would have to have, or an ESD board would have to have, or a group of residents would have to have. This is the same, they're not charging that much. I know they're not charging that much to the MUD districts, so I'm not sure why it would cost that much for ETJ residents.
I mean, I guess theoretically, the city could sign contracts up to on the same scale as what they have with the same scale that they have with the MUD, where it's about $360 a year. I mean, that'll probably go up as well with inflation over time. But I mean, they're already contracting at $360 a year per home inside the MUD. So I think $1,500 would be too much. It'd probably be like $400 a year. And keep in mind that MUD charge also includes other coverages as well, with ambulance, which is paid separately on a different contract. So that's both ambulance and fire, both together.
If a tax is approved to implement an ESD, will the people whose taxes are frozen, will they need to pay taxes on that? Your answer was yes to me. If you have a homestead exemption, then you'll still have to pay that tax. That's what I understood. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a new tax. I think it would have to be, everybody would pay that tax.
And if you're a veteran, you still would have to pay that tax.
You know, do we know the answer to that, Ian?
My understanding is yes.
Okay.
Unless it's 100%.
Yeah.
If you have 100% disability, though, you're not going to have to pay that because you would be exempt from those taxes, I believe. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think if you have 100% where you're not taxed, I don't think that, but you know, that's a limited amount, and I'm not sure if they pass the incremental percentage either.
Thank you. This is a question somebody asked me to ask. I'm not sure it's really your question, but why are you building schools outside the city limits if you can't provide fire service? My child is just as important as a city child.
I think that's a great question for someone on the school board.
Well, I am not building schools outside of the city limits without having a purpose to do that, because if we don't build schools, we'll have the children sit on the lawn outside in all kinds of weather, because we have children in those neighborhoods that have to go to school. So that is why we're building schools, is because we have children there and we have to educate them. But I do believe that we should have fire. We are having, by the way, the city has said that they would take care of all the schools.
Does that include the school buses?
But the problem is that this couple that asked me to read this said that it would take a really long time to get from that fire station to that school. And that's why they said their child is as important as any other child. And I agree with that. We do have to find a solution to get quick service to every single person. Please hear that. We have to make sure that everybody in here is taken care of. Thank you. Do you know of any lawsuits concerning a lack of fire service?
No, because it's not a mandated responsibility. And even I've even heard of some Supreme Court cases, at least with regards to police, that even though you have those services inside a city, if something were to happen, from inaction from police, I know that it was ruled that the city did not have to provide a response with their police. And if a negative consequence happened, I would think that same Supreme Court ruling would also apply to fire inside a city even. So outside a city where there's absolutely no responsibility for them to, I really don't think that there would be any way to have any kind of lawsuit against the city for not providing fire service inside or out.
Right. You know how many fires, house fires there were in Princeton last year?
I do not, but it's probably very few. Wow. House fires have become very rare, actually, unless you're hit by lightning. But they're generally very rare.
But when you have it, when you have it and you die?
Well, no, I recognize that, but just to the point that
Okay, thank you.
most of the calls are actually ambulance.
Yeah. Who is responsible for fire protection on Army Corps property? I don't know.
Fire marshal?
It's assigned a district that's assigned currently Wiley.
I don't know the answer.
Our district currently covers Wiley and Princeton would respond. Farmersville will too on the other side of the lake. Nevada has some on the east side. Lavon comes up also. So that core property is surrounded by fire departments that serve that area. We work in conjunction also with the Corps engineers folks. As the commissioner said, we're seeking alternatives. We will have an alternative if this happens.
Does voting on an ETJ guarantee coverage by the city? I said that wrong. Does voting on the ESD, the Emergency Service District, I can't read this writing, y'all, sorry, guarantee coverage by the city?
Yeah, if an ESD passes, it does not guarantee anything. A city can say no. I mean, a city can say no to a county can say no to a city. We can't make another governmental entity do anything. Just like we can't make the state do something, we can't make a school board do something, we can't make a water district do something. They have their representative body that makes the vote and the decision for them.
Has the city of Princeton made an agreement or considered continuing fire protection from October 1st through November 26th, given a vote in favor of the ESD, which will provide the service that will be in the gap?
We don't know that yet. I think we'll continue to have discussions with them about that, but they have not stated that they would or would not at this point.
Okay. Why can't we follow Anna and delay? I'm not sure what they're talking about, but y'all may.
Yeah, Anna's in my precinct. Anna actually made a vote to exclude their ETJ portion from the ESD vote, but at the same time they said, we're going to go ahead and provide fire service to our entire ETJ. So they're just going to go ahead and do it. And that has to do with the interaction between if they had voted no, which they did, but not provide fire service, they would have seen a lot of people opting out of the ETJ, which there's a Senate Bill 2038 where you can actually go and you can actually do a petition of one. Basically, has certain requirements, but basically it's a letter with a few different pieces of information where you can opt out of the ETJ. If they had not agreed to provide fire service, you would have seen people opting out so they could be considered part of the unincorporated area purely, which by the petition language, they would then get a right to vote in the ESD and receive coverage through the ESD.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
That's okay.
Oh, the city of Princeton has said that we should annex. They have a building moratorium because of lack of police. And most of us are not allowed to annex because we're not touching the city. So how would that work?
It would not work. You cannot annex into a city if you are not you don't have some contiguous. You can't.
Thought I knew the answer, but I just wanted to hear it.
We actually had that discussion with the city of Anna and their attorney. Their attorney claims you can annex in non-contiguously, but it hasn't been tested yet, they said, which means they haven't tried to do it and get sued yet and then have it adjudicated by a court. So more than likely, you really need to be adjacent. Plus, why would a city council vote to annex someone in that's at the tip of the Colioca Peninsula if they're not providing fire service even closer to the city limits? I mean, they would then incur a responsibility to provide every city service to far remote people that are way outside the current city limits. I just don't see it happening.
If we already have a branch firehouse Why can't we pay a reasonable tax, excuse me, for a full-time fire department and branch within the county and supplement that with the county funds?
I think we've answered that.
You can't have a big word, asymmetric tax. You have to have a uniform tax across the entire county. You can't have a tax just in a certain area from a particular entity. That's why the ESD is created by the state to do that, because you can define that area on the petition before you submit it. And so that's how you have a tax in just a certain area.
So you're saying that ESD is the only way to tax the residents that are not in the city, but tax us in the county? Thank you. Almost through, guys. Thank you for your patience. Hopefully this is helpful. You provided numbers about the calls Princeton was responsible for outside city limits. With only 200 calls, how much are they actually receiving per call? I think we already got that answered. Thank you. If I figured it right, then you were figuring on 400 calls. It was actually 200. So at 400, they were getting 800 a call. That means at 200 calls, they were getting 1,600. So I just wanted everybody to hear that. Our homes are already built. We are unincorporated, but our addresses say Princeton, Texas. If one day you want to annex those on the peninsula, how will you address all of the rundown homes or burned homes due to your nonchalance about our well-being?
Could you repeat that?
I think what they're saying is, if the city decides they want to annex us, how are they going to deal with all the burned up homes? All right, maybe I should read these before I read them. How will the annexation of the community that I live in to the city be impacted with our homestead status?
What status?
If you're annexed in the city, how does that affect your taxes with your homestead status?
If you get annexed, a homestead exemption applies inside a city just like it does outside a city. And that annexation has to be voluntary. It's not, you would have to ask the city to be annexed. You would sign an agreement specifying what services they're going to provide to you. And then if they don't provide it within 5 years or whatever years you agree to, they have to give you those taxes back. In that regard, an ESD would be a much less costly way, because if you're only concerned about getting fire service, emergency services, an ESD would be probably about 25% of what city taxes would be, just like it's 25% of the city taxes inside the city.
Okay, everybody.
Oh, yeah. And that would apply to whether or not you have a homestead exemption by a city as well. So the city would have to have already voted a homestead exemption.
Thank you both so very much. There's about to be a bad storm outside, and I want to get all of us home safely. So I looked through everything else, and every other question had been touched. So I just want to thank all of you for coming. And yes, please give them a round of applause. Thank you. I have.
About the gap in coverage in the ESD.
Okay, one more. I think most of the people who live in the affected area would vote in favor of the ESD. I would agree. But an ESD can take 1 to 2 years to be set up. What is the plan for that gap in coverage? I think you addressed that. There are private companies who would take the contract or provide 3.5 budget increase to the volunteer departments to provide critical personnel for coverage. I think you addressed that, didn't you? Would you tell him one more time? So what would happen?
What's the question?
What's going to happen during the gap?
The gap year, we will continue to talk to all of the cities and then see if we can get them to agree to some to gap year. Otherwise, the fire marshal will find a department that's going to provide coverage and take the dollars that used to go to Princeton and use those to cover this area.
Good night, farewell. Good night, everybody. Thank you.